The laptop as a network-attached storage, an idea that simultaneously makes no sense. And yet, I don't think I tried hard enough. That thing was using a 15-year-old laptop, one of these ancient ThinkPads. I think I need to try it with actually modern hardware and a modern interface. I was using PCMCIA, an interface that's like ancient and terrible. I can use M.2 for this. So no more ancient ThinkPad. It's time for modern ThinkPad. I want to find out if this idea can actually be functional if I throw proper hardware at it. Instead of the 15-year-old computer, this one I think was made in 2022. It's an 11th Intel generation ThinkPad E15. Actually good. I guess the first part of this is going to be getting this laptop to recognize my HBA. This is an LSI 9300 16i. Basically, you plug in PCI here, and you can plug in 16 hard drives here. Now, just like last time, this laptop does not exactly have a PCI Express port, except that it does. It's just in the form of an M.2 slot. We've gotten away from the sketchy AliExpress PCMCIA card, and now we have a sketchy AliExpress M.2 to PCIe 16X adapter. Let's see if we can make it work. First things first, I need to disassemble my laptop, because unlike last time, M.2 is an internal connector, so it does have to plug in on the inside. I'll pull the cover off, and there is the M.2 port. Notably, the SSD does take up that spot, so I'm gonna move the SSD over this secondary port so this adapter can get the primary port. I'm assuming that would be better, I would think. SSD moving onto this side. I'm just gonna kind of jam it under the fan here. That's probably fine. And we'll get this card right into this port. This slot is meant for a smaller SSD, so it can't actually screw in, but I can screw in the adapter. In theory, this should be as simple as just plugging the card in, plugging in my power cable, and now we find out if it shows up in Windows. And yes, don't worry, I'm not using Windows for the actual NAS. We're just testing stuff right now. I'll use a proper NAS software. Power button, let's try it. I probably should have turned the power supply on first, but Windows seemed to load totally normal. Let's check device manager. Does not show our storage controller at all. It's just not there. That's not good. Let's test with something else. Let's try a USB card. Maybe this will show up. It would probably be smart of me to assume that this is not hot plug. I'm just gonna plug it in while the computer's on anyway. Yeah, that didn't do anything. This is definitely not hot plug. I'll restart the computer. That gives me hope. I plugged in the USB, instantly shows up on the computer. So the adapter and stuff is all working. We just need to make it work with this. I probably just didn't turn on the power supply in time. Let me just put it back. This time I'm gonna make sure the card is fully plugged in and turn on this power supply first, and then turn on the laptop. Oh, we are going backwards. The computer no longer boots. But the computer did turn on when I had this plugged in without it being powered. But since it wasn't powered, it didn't initialize the card. Or maybe it can't initialize the card. I wonder if this interface like shares some PCIe lanes with the other M.2 slot. Maybe they cannot work together. The lights on the LSI card are blinking, which makes me think it's communicating with the computer. I'm gonna take the other SSD out. Maybe we can boot from USB? Actually, we should just boot off this. I can plug a drive into this and boot from that using this interface. Wow, that's hot. Time for a fan. Every time I use this LSI card, I forget how hot it gets, because the 8-port version doesn't heat up at all. This thing, you leave it on for 2 minutes, the thing is on fire. I'm gonna take out the SSD. Let's just go for that. Turn this off. This USB drive has Linux Mint on it, so I'm gonna plug this in, boot Linux, see if I can get drives to show up through this card. Lenovo and Linux. It might need a minute. This looks really promising. Linux is loaded and the lights on the card are flashing right now, so it should be communicating. Let's check our disks. And I suppose I should actually plug in a disk. We'll go for this 320 gigabyte Western Digital hard drive. Oh, yeah, 320 gigabyte hard disk. That is totally working. How do I use this now? Because I can't put an SSD in there. I need to boot off of this. That's the only option, right? There are server operating systems that boot off of USB. Unraid comes to mind, but I usually like to test stuff with TrueNAS because it's free and I don't have to pay for it. So I want to use that. So I'm going to try to boot off the card with an SSD. We'll use this. Now that I think about it, in order to boot off of this card, you have to get that Avago BIOS thing to show up. And usually that just shows up if you have the card plugged in and you boot a computer with it. I have not seen that once with this computer. We're gonna have to figure that one out. I do believe that's something that works with the legacy BIOS, so I probably just have to disable UEFI. There is technically a firmware for these, I think, that can make it work with UEFI BIOSes, but I don't really want to deal with figuring out how to flash this card. This is indeed a UEFI BIOS, and if I go through here, I should be able to go start up. That's not helpful. Does this not support legacy booting? I've confirmed secure boot is disabled, which is required for legacy boot, but I go to startup. There's just no option for that. I don't think this computer can do that. It might be too new. It only supports UEFI. I guess I have two options here. Boot off of a USB, maybe use Unraid, or switch to a slightly older computer that still has an M.2 slot. I do have one of those. This is an X380. It's a bit older, like maybe 2018, 8th generation Intel. I believe this should support legacy boot. I would think so anyway. Ignore the screen. This is a touch screen and I did touch it. It looks like that now. Secure boot's disabled, startup, UEFI, yes, this does support legacy. The reason I was using those ancient laptops in the first episode of this is because I don't like taking apart these computers. They're modern. I legitimately use these things. And I don't want to break them, but I guess we're doing science here. I also just really like this computer because it has a pen, which is almost never useful, but it's a pen. It's cool. This laptop lacks the second M.2 slot. There's just one for the SSD here, but it actually has an extra M.2, but AE, like Wi-Fi slot keyed. I'm not sure if you can adapt these ones to PCIe, but that would be super cool. Card's plugged in, power supply's on, time to press the power button on the older laptop. No, that's not what I wanted. That's network booting. I'm looking for, not that. I have set up this BIOS exactly the way the old ones were, where they'd give me that Avago like firmware thing from this card. That never shows up on this computer. It just doesn't do that. I don't know how to proceed, except for USB booting. I guess that is an option. Let's USB boot. I don't even care anymore. Let's USB boot. I suppose if I'm gonna do that anyway, I might as well just put this back together and use the better one. I'm gonna do that. Hey, look at that. My laptop works again. So this laptop actually does have an Ethernet port. Great for a NAS, right? Except it's one of those half like fold out ones. And it doesn't work without the bottom case of the laptop, which I cannot put on because my wire to go to the card is hanging out of that. I'm trying to think of a way around that, but it's actually legitimately kind of a problem. What if I like tape the cable into the jack? Yeah, that is an elegant solution. I guess it's also time to actually plug some hard drives into this thing. So I've got 8 500 gig drives here that all should connect to this card. Now we just boot up Unraid and watch everything magically work. It's right there. Unraid actually appears to have loaded, so now I'm gonna switch back to this laptop so I can use the web interface. Start your 30-day Unraid free trial. Trial start failed. Thanks. That's super helpful. This is why I just wanted to use TrueNAS. I don't want to deal with Unraid's licensing. Well, ignoring the fact that I can't do anything with this software because it won't apply my trial license, there is my laptop CPU showing up in the web UI. That is super cool to see. And all of my drives, they're actually there. Except that they have a bunch of errors. This is kind of looking like what happened last time. I don't want to buy Unraid, just let me activate the trial, please. I fixed my licensing issue. I'm now allowed to use Unraid for 29 days, 23 hours, and 55 minutes. That should be longer than this server lasts. And this is cool. We already have 2 device warnings and 5 smart errors. Let's try to figure out what that's related to. Reported incorrect. What does that mean? The amount of errors that could not be recovered using hardware ECC. Does anything in this setup have ECC? I don't know how that works. I'm just going to ignore that. For now, I've made an SMB share and I'm gonna copy some files to this share so I can actually have something on my NAS to test it out and see if it dies during the file transfer, like the last one did. This is the working version of the server setup. Laptop, through the HBA card with the hard drive stack, currently using about 85 watts. So the efficiency of the laptop is really good, only 15 watts for the entire computer that's running your server, except for the fact that the hard drives and the HBA are using 80 watts. I feel like that kind of ruins the point of using the laptop making the server more efficient. However, I feel like this could work really well if you were gonna swap out this HBA for a network card and run this as like a router or something like that. I did manage to get 500 gigabytes copied onto this thing though, mostly problem-free. I did have the charger disconnect and the battery died and everything just shut off and stopped working. No crazy errors and drives disconnecting like last time. That actually seems to be working. Like, these drives are connected to the system and they're just working as they should. I've got a bunch of video files copied onto this thing and I can access them and use them in DaVinci Resolve. It's all accessible as you'd expect. And then I did enable Docker and install Jellyfin for media server stuff. I just put a bunch of random video files on there. This is a 4K H.264 30 FPS video file. Absolutely no issues loading that up and streaming it from this server. So the laptop NAS is real. And if you use actually good hardware with modern interface, the M.2 port, it does work. It still doesn't make sense. Maybe as a router. Probably the most obvious issue with this setup is that it's spread out across my desk. Usually you want to throw all this stuff in like a rack mount case, you know, actually have hard drive mounts. It would be pretty cool if you could make a case that all of this stuff fits in, the power supply, the hard drives, the HBA, and it like perfectly concealed underneath the laptop. Anyways, that is the laptop NAS. Version 2, it actually works this time. Thank you for watching and come back next week. Subscribe.